One of the big elections heading in just a couple weeks now is the New York mayoral election, which has got national attention. You have Zohran Mamdani, who has been making his campaign stops. Again, a very gifted orator. I've said that before. I think it's going to be a very, very unlikely chance that he loses. But I feel like he's trying his best to come up with reasons for people not to vote for him and kind of waving it in their faces. What we're talking about right now is that during a campaign stop, and look, this wasn't like a photo line of 1,000 people who happened to get a picture with someone. Because I've got pictures with people. People take pictures with me all the time. I don't know who they necessarily are. They seem like nice people in the moment, but who knows? Maybe they could be unindicted co-conspirators of terrorism. And that's what he did. He took a picture with one of the unindicted co-conspirators of the World Trade Center bombing in the 90s and then bragged about it online. Put it on social media. So again, it wasn't like just a random person. It was like it was an honor to be with this person, Will.
This is a very controversial figure for obvious reasons. This is a imam in Brooklyn. The actual conspirators of the people that perpetrated the terror in 93 attended this mosque. This is an imam that has very radical views, believes in Sharia law over democracy, including all of the worst punishments you think of when you think of Sharia law. He has had statements referring to jihad against New York, and then has, would cover that up and be like, I don't mean like an armed jihad against New York. But this is not someone that you would expect.
The good kind.
The leading candidate for mayor of New York, just, 24 years after 9/11, would be promoting as a campaign stop where he went to Friday prayers with this imam in a radical Islamic mosque in Brooklyn, but yet here we are.
When you control New York City, you actually control a lot of what's going on in the country and a lot of what's going on in the world. It's one of the biggest hubs for pretty much all industries. Some stuff have changed in the post-COVID world, but let's say in the last 5 years, other than that, when things got crazy, you're talking about what people would call the capital of the world would be New York City. So when you run New York City, though he may be giving campaign promises he can't live up to, it doesn't mean you have no sway on what the future looks like. And when that future is a democratic socialist, and again, I'm not using that pejoratively, I'm using that is the term of which he runs under.
And then you also see what that plays out as. We've seen how he's been very dodgy on the way that he would address the Palestinian protest when it came to the phrase intifada now or bring the intifada here.
To the sea, all
things of that. He had to try to walk a very narrow line to try and not seem like a radical, but at the same time still appease that base. And it's what he believes. Like, I don't think that at the end of the day, that if you were to be in a room with them, be like, do you believe most of what they are calling for on the Palestinian protests? That's not like saying we're assuming something about him. That would be probably in line with his ideology. We know that that's what his major party, the Democrat Socialists of America, believes. He is obviously running as a Democrat as far as the ticket there. But then you also have to think about this imagery. He's clearly not afraid of this. This isn't something that people are uncovering and hiding. He is okay with these associations. This is an individual who has been called an unindicted co-conspirator of the 93 World Trade Center bombing. He was the vice president of the Islamic Society of North America, which is an American extension of the Muslim Student Association and the Muslim Brotherhood. He was vice president of that. That organization was an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land terror financing case. So his roots to radical Islam, this imam, are not necessarily in the shadows or just speculated about. This is a very radical individual. There are, I would assume, dozens and dozens of more moderate Islamic leaders, if he wanted to have a meeting with go to a prayer in New York City just ahead of his election, he could have done that. You feel like this is a choice, or it is a very close association, which should concern people.
Yeah, I think it can go either way. I've met a lot of these young politicians, and a lot of times when you get down to it, you actually talk to them in person, you're like, this is a good guy. This person is just saying what they think is going to win them election. Not that makes him a good guy, but this person is not necessarily the radical that they portray. When you look at who he was 10 years ago, you're talking about someone who was releasing a lot of hip hop music, he's a big pro wrestling fan, he's a big sports guy. not necessarily who you would think would be in line to be mayor. I'm not even sure how all of that came together. But even then, some of his hip hop music was a bit radical at the time. But he kind of speaks of a new New York, and that is a bit alarming when we're talking about what the future looks like. I want to play you a clip. This is, again, I like to go to Bill Maher and from the Club Random podcast, because I always think it's interesting because we're going to be opposed on a lot of things. But there are many times where I think more recently in the last few years, he's certainly lined up with a lot of conservatives more recently. But I do think as a Democrat, he brings an interesting point of view, which is what I've been saying here for the last few weeks. But I think it's always good to hear from the other side of the aisle saying the similar thing. So here's Bill Maher on Club Random.
New York is New York. It's definitely it's the media capital, the financial capital. It is a bellwether like no other city is in this country. So don't tell me that who the mayor of New York is doesn't matter.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second. Do you think, let's say, on the seize the means of production, do you think that the mayor, that one person, if he is a democratic socialist, do you think that he would have the power and influence to be able to usher in socialism?
He definitely has the power and influence to elect J.D. Vance or whoever is the Republican candidate next time.
And he double downs on this. So again, saying, you know what, you may not think he has the power, but he has the power to actually sway what the future could look like, because we all look to New York to see how things are going. When you have someone who is saying they're Democrat socialist, and then you see a city unraveling, it could obviously have ripple effects around the country. He doubles down on it. Take a listen.
It is a walking commercial for the Republican Party nationally.
I think the Republicans are going to...
When you let the Democrat socialists, and now they're actually calling themselves socialists, when you let them take over a major American city, this is what you get. The state-run grocery stores, which work so well in Cuba and the Soviet Union and Venezuela, just bad ideas. And again, this ugly streak, streak of anti-Semitism.
Who's the most popular politician on the left?
AOC? I don't know.
One of, but who's Bernie? Bernie is
yeah.
Bernie is. I mean, he's not a capitalist.
No, he's not, and he's also not president.
He's not. But
never would be.
But neither is Mamdani.
No, but he will. Trust me, he will be featured in the campaign commercials.
But they're going to feature people. They boogeyman everybody.
Yeah, but you don't have to boogeyman him. He does it to himself.
All right, yeah, it featured in the campaign commercials on either side here because we know where this could be headed.
And even that, you don't have to boogeyman him. He does it to himself. Once again, this photo op, this posting, he put it out there as well.
That's what I'm saying. It's asking for it.
This is his ideology. And when we're talking about New York, which has seen a decline in recent decade, I would say, as well as what New York was and the unity around New York after the 9/11 terror attacks and what America's city became in that 10 years, I'd say, even after 9/11, I think this is shocking to anyone that lived through that. And you mentioned he was 10 years old when 9/11 happened. But just even the fact that we're at this point where the front runner for the mayoral candidate is posting a picture with a divisive character like this imam and proud of it, and will still probably win the election, is what is so shocking, I think, to those of us that lived through 9/11, lived through those years, and even the never forget mantra that America lived by for so long. When you have someone that is that closely tied to those type of events, tied to terrorism in that way, in multiple different ways, it is shocking that this is where we are at this point.